Today we're going to be speaking on the incredibly important issue of contentment. Very few men know it. And last week we spoke on gratitude. I know I've taught on contentment, but I can be pretty confident that you won't remember what I said. So with this rich confidence, I can just go with impunity and just say as if you didn't hear a word, and that's going to be the way it works. But this is important material because we wrestle with this material constantly. I think about the scene from Chariots of Fire when Harold Abrahams is getting prepared for his final run, and it's his 100-meter, and he is with his friend Ashley Montague. And as he's being rubbed down by his trainer, he says, there's something about you. You have something I do not have. You are, you're kind, you are, and he talks about his qualities. You have courage, but you have contentment. That's what it is, contentment. He says, you are my most complete man. You have contentment. I'm 24 years old, he says, and I haven't known a day of it in my life. This whole idea of contentment. And he says, then he goes on to say, and I'm about to go down this race. I have 100 meters to determine all that I've been training for, and even then I'm not sure if I win, whether it'll really be enough. And of course it wasn't. The reality would be that he's got this very brief thing, about under 10 seconds, about 10 seconds to justify his life, and even there he knows it's not going to be enough. And indeed, after he wins the gold medal, he is really, they get drunk because it's never what it's cracked up to be. We all know this. One of the most painful moments in our life is when we experience what just promised to deliver the ultimate experience, and it lets us down. And it seems that those things let us down again and again. Whatever the world promises, it's never what it's cracked up to be, is it? It just seems that there's always this struggle in life. In one of my favorite Lewis books, C.S. Lewis books, the Screwtape Letters, there's a little statement made by Uncle Screwtape, and he gives wonderfully diabolical counsel to his nephew Wormwood, a junior devil. And he says this: "We want a whole race perpetually in pursuit of the rainbow's end. Never honest, nor kind, nor happy now, but always using as mere fuel wherewith to heap the altar of the future every real gift which is offered them in the present." You see what he's saying there? We want them to live in the future. We do not want them to live in the present tense. We want them to suppose that somehow the future will make up for their present lack. And so we want them to sacrifice the opportunities of the present tense on the altar of future prospects. That seems to be a constant theme in many people's lives. Most people that we know probably live in the future tense. And the odd thing is, they reach the point when they run out of future. Get old enough and you begin to admit you don't have a whole lot of future left. Then we do this bizarre thing. We make this switch, and we switch back into living into the past, and we live in Nostalgiaville. So the upshot then is that they've been in the future, and then they live in the past, and it's possible then for a person to miss his life as a person misses a plane. You can just never be there for it. It was there, but you weren't there. All you ever had was what? The present moment. That's all you have. The closest thing that where we have to eternity is really the now. Not the future, but the now is the closest thing we know to the eternity. God, you see, is in the eternal now. He is the one who always was, who is, and who will be, but He is the eternal now. He is in all times. And He invites us to live in the now, and to live fully alive to the opportunities of the present tense. Otherwise, we're going to suppose that the days ahead will make up for what we perceive to be our present lack. and it'll never satisfy. You see, that's an error. There's a lot of lies we can buy into, and that's certainly one of them. The supposition that somehow, yeah, it's not good now, but wait, it'll get better. And then then a little later on, and even if you achieve what you thought was going to bring you happiness, what happened? It didn't deliver. And therefore, you think, well, maybe the next one around, and so forth. And so a man can live from product to product to product, never really alive to the process. So we say, when I get this, or when that happens, I'll be happy. But this is an exercise, I think, in self-deception, because it overlooks the fact that even when we get what we want, it never delivers what it's promised. So this is the thing we have to at least be brutally honest with and wrestle with on our own journeys and lives. So as I see it then, most of us don't know precisely what we want. That's the interesting thing. If I press somebody, what do you really want? Most people couldn't give you a coherent answer. My dad was that way. He always, every week he would spend money on the lottery in Florida. I said, Dad, you do understand, don't you, that you have a better chance of being hit by lightning than winning the lottery? He said, well, someone's going to win. And I said, it won't be you. He can be pretty confident about that. And then you think about the lottery, which is a tax on the mathematically challenged to begin with. I said, Dad, if you just put the money that you put in each week in the lottery away, by this time you'd actually have a nice little savings account. But I could never persuade him otherwise. So I finally, later on, asked him, what would you do if you did win the lottery? He didn't have a real clue. It was kind of a nebulous, incoherent answer that he provided. Something that was so vague I couldn't really clearly see what he wanted. He always talked about when my ship comes in. But if the ship came in, he didn't know what to do with the thing. And so this is the interesting thing. He knew he wasn't satisfied with what he had, but he didn't know what he really wanted. You see, this is the thing. We're certain, we don't know what we want, but we're sure we don't have it. That's the mindset that I think we succumb to. So you try to press that on. And by the way, as you well know, even if he did win the lottery, probably the worst thing that ever happened to him. As you well know, it doesn't generally lead to a lot of happiness in most people's lives. It's actually usually a recipe for disaster. But at any rate, the fact is we pursue a treasure at the end of the rainbow, and you never drink deeply at the well of the present moment. And so it's possible then for us to miss out on all that we were given. But here's the point. If you're not satisfied with what you have, you're not going to be satisfied with what you want. And that's really going to be the key to contentment, is learning the secret of satisfaction and of contentment. Is God able to give me what He knows I need when I need it, even though it may not be what I perceive that I want? And it's going to be the question of who determines the content of my life. It's either going to be me who tries to determine. By content, I mean my possessions, I mean my money, I mean my position, my family, my circumstances. That's the content of my life. And either I will ask the Lord then to be the one who determines the content of my life, or I will seek to determine that myself. And there are going to be very different courses I will take accordingly. If I allow Christ to determine the content of my life, it will lead to one approach that's dramatically different than if I allow myself to determine. You see, here's what will happen. If I decide that I'm going to be the one who seeks to control it, then how do I quantify content? How do I measure what's worth getting? Tell me, what would you do? How would you determine what that content should be? And I have an answer for that. It's the word comparison. I will compare with other people to see if I really measure up to what I ought to have, you see. So I'm going to look at other people and see what they have. So thus, if I lived in a world where everybody rode bicycles, and I'm the only person with, even if it's a beat-up old car, I'm better off, you see, than they are. But then suppose I have that beat-up old car and I move to another place and everybody's riding a really excellent vehicle. Then suddenly I'm no longer content. You see, it's a question of comparison. And I argue, and I've told you this numerous times, that comparison always is the enemy of contentment.